It's Friday, August 29th. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. This is the last weekday, workday, I think, work weekday in the month of August. We're heading into September already. With me, Ian Burns, managing editor, and we got our really big show today as our final show for the week. But I also want to bring to highlight that we also do a local news broadcast that's on around 3 o'clock every day, and it focuses on Kelowna, and that's with Josh Duncan. The really big news, I don't know if it's good news, the Canadian economy crashes into recessionary territory. That's kind of the theme of this show here today. And there's at least one serious Liberal minister. The world is laughing at us. The Liberals want to keep you in the dark and will even go to court to keep their secrets. And only old people watching TV, according to the CRTC. Surprise, surprise. Axe fact checks Joly, and Pierre Poilievre calls for stand on guard. And there's chaos on the streets in BC. All that and a lot more on the really big show. Good morning.
Good morning. That's not a very good morning. Let's just leave it at morning.
Yeah, so the Canadian economy shrinks as exports to the U.S. Plummet, and that's a fall of 1.6% here. And that's, we're heading into recessionary territory here.
Yeah, I somewhat resent the way that it's characterized as 1.6. That's literally it's really 0.4% between first quarter and second quarter. And then they've thought, you know what we're going to do? We're going to times that by 4. And then we're going to put that in our headline. Obviously, the economy is not going to stay the same for 4 quarters necessarily. But I mean, yeah, either way, it's a major decline. And the more interesting thing by far is the fact that exports are down 7.5%, cars and trucks down 25%.
So we got that next graph there to show you there too, right? So, and it just shows you
that's what really matters, I think, rather than the sensationalized 1.6. That's bollocks, really. But what really is significant is that it's almost what we first were warned about, and the initial panic with the US tariffs. It was about exactly this kind of quarterly report, wasn't it? And now we have it, and it's kind of staring down the barrel of a gun.
Yeah, and the big one too is business investment plummeted as well, right? So we've seen a drop in business investment of 10%. So that's we've been talking about that money outflow into the United States and that out of Canada, and that's really starting to show up too, right? So business
and that's productivity, isn't it? In a nutshell, productivity is something that's been like dragging on the Canadian economy for many years now. And one of the main causes of that productivity decline is a lack of investment, particularly in things like machinery. And that's gone down in this report. It's all, it's very dark, isn't it? And if you've been following sort of economics in Canada in recent years, you recognize a lot of bad signs in this report, I think.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people now calling, Tiff Macklin late. I think Trump calls his Jerome Powell too late Powell. The same thing I would say in Canada here. Tiff Macklin is way too late in stimulating this economy. Real estate is actually, we're seeing mortgage delinquencies at pandemic levels. It's a mess, and we're seeing houses not sell. We're seeing real estate values plummet. All kinds of really bad news, and most of Canadian wealth is tied up in real estate here, and interest rates are still too high here.
Certainly what Doug Ford thinks publicly, and I'm sure what almost every other premier thinks privately. David Eby sort of said that once, didn't he? But he doesn't speak like that anymore. I think that's when he wanted to be elected. But yeah, in general, I think there's dismay, isn't there, among leaders when it comes to Macklin's decision. But he justifies it by saying, basically he says, it's kind of sad, but basically what he says is, I don't know what to do, because he doesn't know what's going to happen with the tariffs. It's too unpredictable. So he says, in the absence of any sort of certainty, I'm just going to not do anything. That's if you read his summary, that's basically what he says. And there's a little bit of, they say inflation is a little bit scary if you remove energy, which I just find to be a very arbitrary thing to do. But they've said that inflation could be a worry based on that. But I mean, I think the reality is he's kind of like a deer caught in the headlights, isn't he? He doesn't know what to do and that fundamentally trickles right down from Donald Trump because nobody knows what Trump's going to do. So here we are.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people now calling for it. I think that the rate cut is almost guaranteed at this point. They don't have a choice. They have to cut rates to stimulate this economy. Jobs, unemployment rising, delinquencies rising. The only people making out really well right now is government employees and the banks. The banks in Canada seem to be making out like bandits. So, and then Pierre Poilievre starts calling people out. Like Poilievre's posted there. Canada just posted the worst current account deficit in history, and all. He points out the bad stuff. And here comes the typical stuff that you would see from the liberal shills in that disgusting post of this is from Laura Babcock. When you criticize, not only is Canada under unprecedented economic attack from the American that calls on Canadians to stand together, but I can't recall a leader of opposition be so negative. These are the people that wouldn't allow you to criticize Tiff Macklin when he deserves criticism. And they're coming out again too. And then Rod Vanier there says, I'm not sure whose side Pierre Poilievre is on, not Canada's. You know what I mean? Here comes the defenders.
So if the Canadian economy is in the garbage and you're upset about that, then you're a traitor. Is that basically what that means?
So it's obviously Pierre Poilievre's fault because he's the one running the economy, not the Liberals. They have nothing to do with it. They have nothing. Tiff Macklin has nothing to do with it as well. But here's the sad part of all this whole thing. It's a tale of two nations, and it doesn't have to be a tale of two nations, but it is. And then listen to this from CNBC on the American economy as they talk about their numbers.
From a comp basis, that would still be the best quarter since September of 23, third quarter of 23. Consumption, always important in a consumption economy. It remains strong. 1.4, our first look. 1.6, our modified look. 1.6 will be the best consumption since the last quarter of 24 when it was well above. It was at 4%. Now, the pricing index, maybe this has more relevance considering all the issues of the day the press is on with the Fed. Well, it remains at 2%. No changes there.
Their economy firing on all cylinders, ours sputtering, all self-inflicted. I mean, you can, those two people that are attacking Pierre there can, blame Pierre all they want. It was the policies of the last 10 years, suppressing are really only thing that we have to sell, and that's energy. And we're going to talk about the only serious liberal here in Canada. We're going to play a clip from him in a second. But all this anger at the U.S. If you run a company, if you're running a company, and you rely on one big customer, that is your one big customer, and then if you start going out and you start sticking sticks in your biggest customer's eyes, what do you think happens?
Well, the Americans have done that, haven't they? We're their biggest customer, and they've stuck quite a lot of large objects in our eyeballs.
But we're also heavily
the difference
reliant
is they
on
are
them.
America, and we're Canada, and America is. I mean, it's not just in a category of its own. It's beyond that. It's like on a planet of its own. It's not. You can't compare the two. Whereas Canada is an ordinary country, and ordinary countries suffer when they sort of make mistakes, let's say. They suffer big time, whereas the Americans just basically never suffer because they have an entire galaxy to themselves, really, don't they?
And our Canadian media is been, the government funded media has been atrocious in this, riling up Canadians. And here, this Andrew Coyne has completely lost his mind. Now he's put this piece out here. He's getting some blowback from some other people, but no, there's an opinion, the Globe and Mail piece there. Donald Trump on the brink of becoming a dictator. Can he be stopped? Like, what is the Canadian newspaper doing running a piece like that? Like, it doesn't make
He's
any
on a roll, Coyne. The last article I read of his was actually the current system for self-defense in Canada is absolutely great and very wise and smart, and we don't need castle doctrine because we already basically have it. That's the last thing I read from him. I mean, he plays both sides of it, doesn't he? That's kind of his shtick, I think. Sometimes he infuriates liberals, but
I think he might need. He's a commentator on CBC as well as writing pieces for the Globe and Mail. But here's Canada's only serious politician. Watch him push back when he gets the typical liberal media question here. Let's play this clip here. It's a bit
So
long.
we're running a little bit out of time, so we'll take one more question, and we'll move to Darius Nikas next.
Yes, Minister, thanks for taking our question and supporting the fifth estate as well as the fourth. The question really is around the actual carbon footprint of LNG transport. You'll know the Cornell report last year obviously suggested very strongly that, in fact, LNG, once you factored in shipping, had a larger carbon footprint than coal. So given that we're treating it as a transition fuel, and it's been obviously framed as such for many years in this industry and by government, do you not think that we are going to squander a chance at actually keeping on track for our broader emissions ambitions as a country, and indeed the impact it'll have on global emissions? Thank you.
I'm just not sure I get the premise of your question. If you're trying to suggest that that LNG has a higher carbon footprint than coal, I just fundamentally reject that.
Well, not my study. It was obviously out of Cornell, Professor Holworth study last year.
I would reject the premise of that research. I think there's lots of research that suggests that otherwise would be the case. What I can tell you is it's very clear that the LNG that's produced by Canada has the lowest carbon intensity of any of the major LNG suppliers in the world, and that our LNG is closer to the markets in Northern Asia than other producers. And our LNG, if it's shipped off the East Coast, would be closer to Europe than all of the other producers other than Norway. So I think it's pretty clear we're in a pretty good position to provide the lowest carbon intensity fuel with the lowest transportation emissions if people are going to use natural gas as a transition fuel, which we heard loud and clear in Germany today. They will be using more of it, and they will be using it for longer. So again, as Canadians, we have a choice. Someone is going to provide that fuel to Germany. I believe Canadians would expect us to provide that fuel, given we have the cleanest fuel out there. It generates Canadian jobs. It uses Canadian steel and aluminum. It generates revenues for Canadian governments so they can provide the services Canadians expect. And it provides unprecedented levels of economic reconciliation for the First Nations who are leading many of these projects. So from my perspective.
Where was this guy 10 years ago?
What was he? He was in charge of some hydro company, I think, wasn't he? But this is what I was saying yesterday. Like, this guy is not a politician, not even close, and he's not willing to go along with the nonsense of CBC. But it's so funny. I thought the funniest thing about that interaction, and I watched that live as it was happening, and I was giggling away, was when he was like, "What study? Like, I don't agree with that. Like, what are you trying to say that coal, or that gas is dirtier than coal?" And then the CBC report was like, "No, I'm not saying it. It's this expert that I've found in like the garbage can somewhere." But it's like it's an anomalous study, basically, isn't it? It's a one-off study, but he tried to present it as though it was kind of factual, and that was the consensus, that LNG is dirtier than coal. Not very many experts believe that to be true.
This is the stuff that the Conservatives, both in Alberta and in the federally, have been saying for 10 plus years. And it was Mark Carney was one of the voices that stopped the Northern Gateway pipeline as well. It's his voice. And it's this guy is, how's he going to survive with Stephen Guilbeault? You know? Yeah,
it's a very strange set of bedfellows. And also the new environment minister, who is a bit sort of on the sort of Guilbeault side of things, I would say. Whereas he is a bit more of a pragmatist, isn't he, this guy? And somebody's just said that, Ian Leslie there in the comments, I haven't heard a Liberal talk like that since the 1990s. It's like, yeah. I mean, people that I know who aren't from Canada, I try to explain to them what the Liberal Party used to be. And you speak very well on this, actually, because, as you said, you used to quite admire the Liberals, didn't you, under like Chrétien? It's really hard, isn't it, to And you can't overstate how strange the Liberal Party has become now compared to what it used to be. Because it used to be like the Liberal Party and Canadian
Used to
politics
be
in
this
general
guy, this
used to
guy.
just be this
Yeah.
man. Yeah, it was like a hundred versions of this man. He even looks a little bit like Stephen Harper, doesn't he? Which I think is appropriate because it's just like, oh yeah, whatever works then. Okay, we'll do that. Like just old-fashioned pragmatism. And I feel like Mark Carney, his political brand is based on the idea that that's what he is as well. And yet, as you've just said, and as many people often say, that's not really true. He's much closer to the sort of radical end when it comes to climate politics, at least.
Did you see the media back down on him, though? Whereas if that was Poilievre making that statement, they just would have been like rabid dogs on him. You know, calling him a climate denier and all kinds of things, right? You never heard any of that, though, right? Because they're just not sure what to do here because that's their boss.
Well, that's the thing. And it's almost like an argument might be made if you were just looking at this from with no partisan connections, just looking at it from above, looking down on it. An argument can be made that really it's only the Liberals that could push forward fossil fuels projects because, as you say, they are like the party of so many people who usually oppose those projects. So they can actually do it, and they can use a lot of sort of slimy language about economic reconciliation and so on, and they can get it through. They can get it past the blockers. Whereas if this was Pierre Poilievre and he was now prime minister, as you rightly point out, it would be the end of the world, wouldn't it? Because some LNG projects were being sponsored by the federal government. It would be the end of the world, and Pierre Poilievre would be, the new Hitler. That is exactly where we would be, and there'd be protests and the usual sort of agitation. So, in a sort of cynical way, you could say that the Liberals are actually better at doing this kind of thing, or at least they have more potential to do it because they face less resistance.
Yeah, and I mean, some people are saying it's about time we called some of these studies what they are from tenured academics, because again, funded by the government as well, and and he just pushes back on it again. If it was, I've seen so many of these press conferences where, if that was a conservative doing it, they just would have like attacked him like dogs, right, and called him a climate denier and all these things. You couldn't even say those words. All of a sudden, it's okay, and they even said, "Well, it's not my study, not mine."
But the fact is they've plucked out this study. So this study argues, I'm not familiar with this study, but if I take his word for it, the reporter's word for it, it says that LNG is actually worse for the environment than coal. I mean, that's pretty sort of fringe, isn't it? That's not your run-of-the-mill study. That's definitely not what the average climate expert or whatever tends to say. Can you imagine CBC doing that in another area of public discussion, where they would pluck out a really sort of obscure study that goes against the consensus? They love to say the consensus, don't they? So an equivalent would be one of these studies that comes out and says, actually, climate change is not really a big deal whatsoever. We shouldn't worry about it. Everything's cool. There are studies that come out like that. Can you imagine the CBC like going through the archives to find that and then presenting it? It obviously represents an agenda that they're trying to push.
Well, here you go. Speaking of that, here you go. It's the Canadian Press Agency has interviewed several teachers across the country who think there is a moral imperative to discuss climate change in the classroom. Said that climate change extends to every single subject in the curriculum. Well, and there they go. And she has made her students look at it, how traveling by car contributes to CO2. Another said politicians discussing the school curriculum just makes things worse. We need to depoliticize this stuff. So there they go. They're going to try and tell your kids. Meanwhile, we talked about yesterday, that senator there that flew home. How many times was it? 19, I can't remember, 19 times in 14 weeks or something like that to Winnipeg. The same guy that says you shouldn't be driving your car, and they're telling your kids that you shouldn't go in your car as well. So it's just
but that's
our youth
like entirely. That is a crazy thing to tell kids, isn't it? Who, without context, if you tell your kids that driving a car is like a really bad thing to do, and you're killing the planet, and then you link it to things like wildfires, and you don't provide the context, which is that Canada and the entire nation of Canada, everybody who lives in Canada, contribute only a tiny, tiny fraction of global emissions. So really, if you drive your car to the store, it doesn't mean anything. It's fine. You can do that. What matters is the industrial complex in the Pearl River in China, and Indian coal plants and things like that. That's what really matters. If you don't have that context in the classroom, then what are you doing? You're just freaking out kids, and you're just turning them into like weird hippies that are gonna refuse to get their driving license or something like that because they wrongly think that that's going to save the planet because they've been given false information by teachers. And I think that bit at the end there, we need to depoliticize it. That tells you everything you need to know. And saying politicians getting involved in the curriculum makes things worse. In other words, we don't want democratic oversight of what we teach your children. We want to be in control of that because we know best. Even though, as I've just explained there, by removing that context from that discussion, they've shown that they don't know best. They've shown that they don't know anything. And that they're just run-of-the-mill, mediocre partisans who've swallowed the usual sort of nonsense from the likes of The Guardian. And they just want to teach that to children. No, thank you.
Wildfires in 2023 drove some Canada's air pollution, and it was so disastrous that it resulted in pollution surging to levels not seen since the 1990s again. The report from the Energy Policy Institute of the University of Chicago found that 2023 pollution levels were maintained over life, and the life expectancy of people in Canada, including BC, would decline by 4 years. The firefighters union in Nova Scotia put out a piece and blaming poor forest management for the forest fires. And we've interviewed so many people here in British Columbia. Poor forest management, no mitigation. Finland has similar type forests to us, and they almost no forest fires. What do? They have their forests are young, 100 years old. The forest industries here in British Columbia call for more participation by industry to make sure that the forests are young, more management of the forest. Most of our CO2 emissions in Canada result from forest fires. And we can see it here in the Okanagan Valley. Poor, where we see mitigation, the fires get put out real quick. We've seen some mitigation done by the City of Kelowna and Knox Mountain. Fire starts, fire's out like within a couple hours. We see areas where there's no mitigation, fire starts, and it just becomes a raging inferno because of no mitigation. We look at the 2003 fire here in Kelowna, and go read the Auditor General's report. Go read it for people screaming about climate. Go read that audit that warned the government that there would be a disaster. Nick Arkell, I interviewed with Gormans, said too, it will be a disaster. There was like knee deep in pine needles. No mitigation, no mitigation. They said they wouldn't cut any trees down because it was a mountain park. So look to the government mismanagement of forests for all this forest fire stuff. Look there.
But also, it's like that actions versus words thing that we talk about a lot. And if you want to understand reality, spend a lot less time thinking about words and more time on actions. And one of the classic ones in this climate debate is, okay, you got somebody like Justin Trudeau who says the world's going to end because of carbon emissions and climate change and all the rest of it, and we have to do everything to bring them down. And then he flies on a plane all the time. For just to go to Tofino to surf and things like that. So you see things, or like Taylor Swift or whoever you want, you see things like that and you're like, okay, so your actions contradict your words. But with the wildfires and forests, it seems like the actions of the government, which is to spend enormous amounts of money to make fractional reductions in emissions, that contradicts this obvious statement, this fact that like we literally breathe in this fact every year, which is that it's forest fires that contribute the most emissions from Canada. And yet where's the effort? Where's the like full nation effort? Where's the like wartime effort to do something about forests, spend money on forests? It's not really there, is it? You would think, wouldn't you, that if the government was run by like 100 Tim Hodgsons, that they would just look at the bar chart and they'd say, all right, wildfire emissions is like the biggest part of this bar chart. Maybe that's what we should concentrate all of our effort on. Let's just do something. It's clearly possible to do something about forest management, and yet instead it's things like the EV mandate and all of these things that really aren't going to bring emissions down in any significant degree, whereas wildfires are just taken as kind of like an act of God.
Yeah, Ian puts out a point there, and I've been saying this forever too. Planting deciduous trees, especially in interface areas, protects communities, right? Because that's the main part of this, is protecting communities from interface fires. And deciduous trees, you can't even light them on fire with gasoline, whereas coniferous, obviously with all the dry needles in that. But for the people, go read the report on Jasper. Go read. They were warned for years. And, they tried to pretend, and Guilbeault and them came out and said, oh, that was climate change. And then the Lillooet fire. They tried to sell you the idea that thing just spontaneously combusted. And then we find out later that the RCMP actually accidentally started that fire. All these things. If if forest fires, climate change is driving forest fires, they would be all over the place in the deep woods, because most of them, British Columbia is in the deep woods. But they tend to start where? Near cities, near towns, near infrastructure, because they're started by humans, sometimes accidentally and sometimes on purpose.
Yeah, basically, what was it? Something like 85%, I think, tend to be human caused.
No.
I mean, it's the vast majority, yeah. But surely, I mean, the fact that it doesn't happen, and that it happens more in some countries, even in some provinces more than others, with similar sort of circumstances, that tells you that it's possible, surely, to go in there and do something and manage it.
Finland's an example,
can you
right?
imagine if all of the climate change mitigation money, if the entire Stephen Guilbeault empire was spent on tree management, just think that would make a profound difference in our emissions every year. I would imagine.
250 million allegedly that siphoned off by companies that he's part of was given to mitigation.
Well, a cynic might come in and say, yeah, that's not where the people that stand to benefit have their cash invested. They have it invested in things like wind turbine companies and hydrogen and all kinds of things like that. But I mean, yeah, that obviously is rather cynical, but still.
And this is like something that's been common knowledge, but it took a Polish ambassador to say it out loud and chuckle about it for everybody to realize this. And here's Harman Bangu, an MLA we've interviewed before. It says that, the EB continues to lecture BC about keeping elbows up while ignoring the fact that our LNG heads south to the U.S., who are profiting massively. He blocks tankers that could benefit our coast and our economy. And then another one here from Mark Nixon. Canada sells its natural gas to the U.S. for pennies, and then the U.S. flips it for profits. And then this is what that Polish ambassador was laughing. He was just saying, well, we already buy Canadian LNG. You're just not smart enough to sell it to us. You refuse to sell it to us. So you sell it to the Americans, and the Americans mark it up, make a tremendous profit off of it, and your country continues to virtue signal about it and saying you don't want it. And then again, if you look at some of the companies that are profiting from the sale into America, Brookfield is part of that. Isn't that amazing? The same guy that didn't want to do the Northern Gateway pipeline, that was against it, and the Eastern Pipeline, now all of a sudden makes money off of it when it goes south. It's like Canada's being crippled intentionally. Like we cripple ourselves. We intentionally harm ourselves.
And for some mysterious reason, the people that create this situation, or the lobbies, the groups that create this situation, like Quebec environmentalists, Quebec Liberals, Quebec Greens, the Greens in general, certain First Nations, for some reason, they all seem pretty satisfied with this arrangement, just as they seem pretty satisfied with the arrangement where most Canadian crude goes down into the US. But if they were for real and it was really about the environment and that's what they were really bothered about, wouldn't they be really upset about that as well? Wouldn't they be trying to get a boycott and trying to prevent any sale of oil, any Canadian oil or production of oil? But it's not about that. It's like, oh no, it just mustn't go through the St. Lawrence, or it mustn't go through my ancestral territory or something like that. I just find again, it's actions and words, isn't it? And it just seems that it doesn't add up, because Alberta and people that sell oil and gas, they will find a way to sell it, and unfortunately now it just goes to America at a cut price. I mean, if we're going to sell it, shouldn't we sell it at a like decent price, and then we have more money? Don't want to sound like Danielle Smith, but then we have more money for hospitals and schools and so on.
Well, we used to do a market report on this, but it was getting longer in this part of it. Western Canadian Select sells at a discount because we don't have anybody else to sell it to, right? It sells at a massive discount. And look who makes money off that discount.
Cowboy hat wearing Texans, they do. And then they have like 5 F-150s in their garage. But apparently that's cool. It's okay for that to happen.
Obviously, Tim Hodgson hasn't had the proper briefing from the Liberals because, this headline from the Toronto Sun, Carney's Liberals say Trudeau Liberals were incompetent. Again, it's going to be hard for him to soar like an eagle because I think we said this right from day one, he is a serious guy. Like, he's done serious things. He's been a serious person. And but it's going to be hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by a bunch of turkeys. Like, if you put him in a room, like, how does he sit in a room with Melanie Joly, Chrystia Freeland, and Francois-Philippe Champagne, and Stephen Guilbeault? How do you sit in that room? and just shake your head. Like
God.
I've sat in Toronto boardrooms sometimes, you know, and with some people that you don't think deserve to be in that room, and it's hard to listen for a long time. How is Tim Hodgson going to sit in those rooms?
The Joly Hodgson face to face, that would be a very interesting one. I mean, Gilbo is an ideologue, but I think he has a triple digit IQ, I think. Melanie Joly, on the other hand, not so sure. I don't know what the hell Hodgson would think in that. But probably the reality is that they don't really engage with each other. It probably all just goes through Mark Carney. So
we got a new Minister of International Trade, and he's been warned on China here. This is from Holly Dolan Blacklocks. The Trade Department introductory report to the newly appointed Minister, Maninder Sidhu, said Canada is focused on diversifying away from China as a risky market. The stark analysis comes 5 years after the Canada pulled support for a free trade agreement with the People's Republic. Trade Commissioner serves a focus on diversifying away from China into the broader Indo-Pacific. Said the censored March 14th briefing binder, China remained a challenging market for Canadian businesses due to unfair trade practices, patent theft, ready for this? Slave labor. Yet, what did we do? David Eby here in British Columbia awarded the BC Ferries contract to China. Well, BC Ferries did, which the BC NDP have control over. And the BC Ferries said one of the reasons was cost. And then a lot of the people here in British Columbia are saying, so the unions and some of the other shipbuilders say, how do we compete on cost when they can use slave labor? And here it is, a report right there from the government, the Trade Commission Services. Patent theft and slave labor, right there.
Clearly, he is not in contact with Gregor Robertson or Christy Freeland.
China's pervasive use of unfair and non-market practices, including subsidization, forced technology transfers, insufficient labor standards with forced labor, environmental standards, creates global market distortions. Interesting. Which have eroded the level playing field. Interesting, right? Inferior steel, inferior aluminum, unfair trade practices.
If you read newspaper articles or read books written around about the time when China was about to be welcomed into the World Trade Organization, about 25 years ago. This is all in there. You know, this has been known about for decades. Everybody knows this. Everybody who's even slightly interested in this subject knows this about China, which again, it's kind of like, because I was saying there, all right, this guy clearly hasn't spoken to the person responsible for the bank that gave that money to BC Ferries. But the fact is, the people in charge of that loan, the people in charge of that bank, just the bureaucrats, should obviously have known that China suffers from all of these problems. I mean, it's common knowledge now, isn't it? So it's kind of, the fact that he even needs to say this is astonishing. It's kind of like, it's like sky is blue sort of territory, isn't it?
So the Conservatives listening, John Rustad, Dan Albus, here's all the ammunition you need. It's straight from the Liberal Party itself. You have it. It's outlined right there. You can say it. They've been saying, and they've been like poo-pooed and saying, oh, you know, it's just conservative talk. Here you go. It's right from the Liberals in their briefing binder, right there.
But you also have to ask, just to be a bit more pragmatic, to put my Tim Hodgson hat on, let's say, we also have to wonder, that he's saying Canada's focused on diversifying away from China. Canada is also focused on diversifying away from the United States. United States plus China, that's the world economy. There's not much left. Like, I mean, and they're talking about the Indo-Pacific and stuff like that. What do you mean, Vietnam? Okay, Vietnam's pretty great sort of economic engine. They manufacture a lot of things, but you can't base your export economy on Vietnam.
The sad reality is we need to deal with the United States. Mark Carney promised that he's the guy to negotiate with Donald Trump. So then get it done. Get it done. Negotiate then. Do it. And maybe our biggest card is energy. Play it, but they don't play it. Like, I mean, we're going to see here in 2 weeks what their projects are and how energy is going to be a focus. Here's your friend, Stephen Guilbeault, the guy that says it's immoral to even discuss Bill C-18. I have an interview coming up next week there with Open Media on Bill C-18, how it's crushing local independent media. But here it is. They don't want to share. The Department of Canadian Heritage, that's his department, yesterday said it would not release, not release until after the next federal budget, a memo on Stephen Gabot's a renewed approach to CBC funding. Cabinet had promised the Crown broadcaster a multi-million-dollar boost to its $1.4 billion annual subsidy if the Liberals were re-elected. Imagine why the Liberals were, I mean, the CBC was so, you would say, pro-Liberal in the election there, eh? The memo to Minister Gabot dated May 30th, 8 weeks after Carney promised a re-elected Liberal cabinet would increase CBC funding levels. Canadians rely on CBC, and he said that when we asked that question, we were here, we asked that question of him, you know, like, can you get rid of Bill C-18 so we can get our information on Facebook and Meta, the most important platform where you spend $5 million? And he said, you're not going to like the answer. We're going to give more money to the CBC because they're going to do the job. And he said, we'll not only increase CBC funding by $150 million, but we'll also make this funding statutory, meaning Parliament as a whole will need to approve any future funding, not just by the Cabinet. By strengthening our public broadcasters, we are protecting our identity and our culture. You know what? We're going to talk about it later here on who's watching TV. Carney called the CBC the most important of Canadian institutions. Ask Canadians if they think it's the most important institution. Ask how many Canadians are watching this most important institution. Any budget cut is an attack on Canadian identity, right? If my elected government will take, and this is you interviewed Pascale St. Onge, the former minister. She proposed prior to the election that she would increase funding by 79%. Wow, what a payday, right? And here they don't want to share the information though, right? They say they needed to keep it secret. It's now or never, said St. Onge. We need to just fund them, right? Yeah, sure.
It would make sense, at least a little bit, right? There's similar conversations I had in England about the BBC, but it would make a little bit more sense if the context of this was given more money to the BBC, which is probably the most influential media organization on the planet. Whatever you think of it, I think many things about it, but it's also produced some of the most famous TV shows, actors, and all the rest of it. You know, the BBC, even though it's suffering lately and its reputation is in the dumps a little bit, it still has a lot that it can point to, like David Attenborough and the nature documentaries, and they've done so much. It would make sense a little bit if Pascale St. Onge was talking about that. But she's talking about the CBC. I mean, what's the last great achievement of the CBC? Can anybody can that be sent in a long list, please? Of their great achievements.
Rosemary Barton quickly identifying that all donations to the Freedom Convoy were done by the Russians.
Yeah, and also saying
she got that. It was beamed to her from somewhere, outer space or something.
And also saying that 215 children's bodies were exhumed from Kamloops, or however she phrased it, before that they put a tiny little note saying, actually, that's not quite the full story. But yeah, I mean, there are a couple of TV shows on there. There's like that Schitt's Creek thing. That seems to have been quite popular, though I don't find it particularly funny. But like, come on, give me something. Like, I'm really trying to like play devil's advocate here.
Here's the bigger thing,
I can't find anything.
Here's the bigger thing. They want to keep the payday secret for now. But if it's so important and all the Canadians are watching it, why would you keep it secret? You should be proud of it, not keeping it secret. Why would you keep it secret?
Yeah.
And then
indeed, I mean, that answer's obvious, isn't it? It's like talking about the BBC. Why did the BBC fight for so long to suppress a report into anti-Semitism or anti-Israel bias at the BBC? The fact that they're fighting to stop it tells you the answer. So why are they fighting to stop it? You understand straight away, don't you? You got your answer.
Former Liberal Minister of Immigration, a little bit of mess he left behind there. Former Housing Minister, left a little bit of mess behind there. Now he is the Justice Minister, and now he's looking to censor a report. He sues, actually. He doesn't want that one released. The Attorney General, Sean Fraser, is asking federal judges to quash his own government's release of a secret report deemed injurious to national defense. The Department of Justice seeks to block the scheduled release of access to information document next Tuesday. The risks to national defense in the event of disclosure and publication are significant and must be properly weighed, lawyers wrote to the federal court. The unusual request followed months of closed-door discussion with the Federal National Security and Intelligence Review Agency. There you go, more secrecy from the Liberals.
They do like that a bit, don't they? Yeah. I feel like I'm just going to respond here. Tony Beef recommended something for, I assume that's for my flu. Thank you for that. Just wanted to say thank you. Didn't want to be rude.
Yeah, well, are they supposed to say that you were on something? Is that what they do with Poilievre when he sounded like he had the flu?
What am I on? I'm on Sudafed, so that's like ibuprofen, and ginseng. I've been having some ginseng, which is marketed as like to help you with colds, but probably doesn't.
And here's how the Liberals won the election. It's right here. And this is who's watching TV. This is why CBC deserves a lot more money. The Canadian audience of conventional TV is now over 50. The CRTC, that from the CRTC. Television network revenues fell 8.6% last year to 1.3. And you know the sadder thing about that? If your audience is over 50, as a marketer, you wouldn't advertise on TV. Because
well, you'd advertise 50, those
they don't buy anything.
stair lifts.
They don't buy anything. they really don't buy anything. It's not the audience that buys. Traditional sources such as television and local radio stations are most likely to be used by Canadians 50 plus. Yeah. So and guess who? Here's the buying audience, and least likely to use by Canadians 18 to 24. There you go. Why would you advertise on television or radio, for that matter, if the audience is all just about in the grave?
Yeah, but there is something that demographic does better than anyone else.
Vote.
Which is vote. Yeah.
Exactly.
They love a good vote, don't they?
So prop them up. Keep propping them up. The CRTC, in a report 3 years ago, gave conventional TV until 2025 to determine its survival. It is not a stretch that say decisions made by public policy makers in the next 3 years will determine whether the Canadian broadcast system survives or whether it's our creative sector gets stuck in increasing branch plant economy. I mean, who's paying for cable? Like, if you're watching right now, are you paying for cable still? Like, who's paying for cable? I don't know.
The funny thing is, they always point to this demographic, but everybody that I know in this age group also just has like Netflix and stuff. So I don't know. I don't even know where they are within that demographic. But obviously,
I haven't
somewhere.
had cable forever. I haven't had cable forever, and I haven't had a telephone forever too. Like, got to be like 15 years a telephone. Once you have the cell phone, why would you have a telephone? And then if you have, like a streaming service, like, and I mainly watch YouTube to learn stuff. Like, why would you pay for, like cable, like $100 a month for? And I remember having a discussion when they call you, because they just continue to call, and just like, they're trying to hard sell you. And I said, why would I pay for something, especially the propaganda that comes on there? She said, well, you get news. I said, well, that's the propaganda. Why would I pay for something like that?
But you also get news with like Roku or whatever, like when you've got a digital TV, you get it anyway. You get like CBC and stuff like that.
If you're smart, you get your news right here.
That's true. But for research purposes, if you wanted to watch CBC, you can also do that.
We condense it for you, but the best place to find news, right? Planet Earth, is on X. Really, it's straight from the horse's mouth many times, right? So.
Well, you do have to use your own judgment a bit, I guess. Oh. But then that's the question you have to ask yourself. Would you rather be using your own judgment, or would you rather have Rosemary Barton judge it for you before she tells you?
The good people are putting on, like Hollywood Black Box, they put their stuff on there, as we do, as every, like good places do, right? But so do when they announce things. When Kamala Harris gave her concession speech, where was it first? It was on X. But here's people that make it out.
She posted that video after she'd just downed a bottle of vodka, and she posted that cheer up video.
Maybe she was on Sudafed. Come on.
Yeah, but to be fair, it's possible.
Government payroll tops $71 billion. Like that is an area that we continue to see growth here in Canada, both in the provincial levels and federal levels. Federal payroll costs $71 billion, headed for more than $76 billion based on current trends, and that's from the budget office itself. And it follows the cabinet's throne speech that it would be capping the public service. Not so much capping going on there, right?
Just like they're capping immigration as well, even though we're already blown past the targets.
Growth in personal expenses is driven by an increase in number of full-time equivalents, projected to reach 442,000 by 2029. Overall compensation per full-time equivalent, including pension benefits, $172,000 per full-time employee by 2029. Not bad. Personnel costs are the largest component of federal operating spending. And there you go. Like, I don't know, they're talking about cutting 15%. That remains to be seen. Lots of talk, right?
Well, there's also, they've kind of floated it, haven't they? They floated the idea of, particularly that one that we covered about the Department for Women and Gender Equality or whatever it's called. They were talking about cutting that pretty severely, and then immediately you hear the screeching emanating from downtown Ottawa. So it's hard. I mean, again, like I was saying, if anyone's going to do it, it'll be the Liberals, because they'll be scrutinised a lot less seriously than the Conservatives would be if they'd done this. But
I think
still,
if anybody is so incentivized, they should start a petition to ask for a referendum on CBC, on the funding of CBC. They should ask for a referendum and see how many Canadians want to fund it and increase the funding. And make it secretive. And make it, like, just ask, should we make it secretive? Should we double their funding? Or should we just let them survive on their own?
Can you imagine if Canadian democracy was run like Switzerland's? Because they do that in Switzerland. They have referenda on all kinds of things all the time, and then they're supposed to act on it. Can you imagine how different this country would be if we had like a referendum on the CBC, referendum on immigration, referendum on oil and gas and stuff like that? I mean, it wouldn't be possible, would it? Like the country would just fall apart, I think. But it's interesting to wonder.
Well, if you look at the Liberal Party, they put out this tweet here, and they cite all the news about, like, it's just basically government-funded media, global news. Carney delivers messages of solidarity in Ukraine on its Independence Day. City News. In Warsaw, Carney deepens Canada's defense. Politico. Germany and Canada announced deeper ties. CTV. Canada commits to extending NATO. Where's the media calling power into question?
Politico, can you remember when Politico came on the scene? It was kind of like it was like the best thing ever, wasn't it? Everybody was so excited about Politico, but increasingly they've just become like establishment stooges now, I feel. Yeah. And I mean, I'm selecting Politico here because the other ones just take it for granted that that's what they are. But Politico was supposed to be something a bit different, wasn't it?
And then you talked yesterday, with Melanie, we played that clip from Melanie Joly there, where she was just dishing out the trash on Pierre Poilievre, like didn't answer the question. And then she's facing lots of backlash on that, where she refused to answer the question and then just went on this, like rant about how Pierre Poilievre was not there for this. And so the internet fact checks here. So here's a little clip from Melanie getting fact checked on X.
Opposition leader has been talking a lot, but with no action. Never did we hear him that we should get to 3.5% of defense budget.
A lie detector test determined that was a lie.
And that's why we support getting back to the 2% target as soon as possible.
Never did we hear him talking about the fact that our armed forces should get a pay raise in order to recruit better.
A lie detector test determined that was a lie.
Increasing the dollars available to recruit.
Never did we hear that we should increase defense procurement to make sure that we build more in Canada.
A lie detector test determined that was a lie.
We will support additional money for our military. Reassert that we are properly the ones that lay claim over our Arctic waters.
Never did we hear from him neither the fact that ultimately we need to be less reliant on the U.S.
A lie detector test determined that was a lie.
Reassert our sovereignty in the north. Take back control of our Arctic waters. We need at least one, but probably two Arctic bases.
And never did we hear him about also everything that is linked to our airspace sector and F-35.
A lie detector test determined that was a lie.
We need fighter jets, Poseidon aircraft.
So I could go on and on and on, but I think we have not a lot of time for this interview.
I just love the way she phrases that. Never did we hear neither. What? She's quite a funny way of speaking. But I mean, again, that wasn't quite like for like there, was it? Like, we need more money for recruitment. That's not the same thing as soldiers should be paid more. But I'm nitpicking there. Melanie Joly was still being a little bit silly there,
I think,
as usual.
Part of the CBC budget should go to X so that they can do the fact checking, because obviously CBC not very good at that job.
What was that clip from?
Story.
The lie detector thing? Is that Jerry Springfield or whatever?
I don't know where that is from. It's somewhere, right?
Quite amusing.
Here's another loss for the Canadian economy. The Canadian government, a union vows to fight the devastating closure of the plant that bottles Crown Royal whiskey. Diego is a Canadian bottling plant, so it's going to move to the U.S.
Diageo are absolutely huge, though. They do all sorts of things, don't they? I think don't Diageo have like Guinness and stuff like that? It's like a world. Yeah, and it's British. It's a British company. I thought it was. Yeah, Guinness, Smirnoff.
Well,
I mean, this is a decision that isn't. This isn't just about Canada, is it?
And Brian Lilly put this out. If you want to get a taste how messed up our refugee asylum system is, then read this. And this is from Brian Lilly there. For all the people waiting for the asylum claim to be heard right now were gathered in one place, they would form a city bigger than Kitchener, Regina, or Burnaby. It's just another example of the mess the Liberals have created, right?
Yeah, I mean,
they clog the courts up. You know what I mean? Like this is just this crazy.
That's bigger than, or just about the same size as the population of the Central Okanagan, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a huge number, and it helps to talk about it in those terms. I mean, Burnaby as well. It helps to visualize it, I think, doesn't it? When you think about the numbers involved here, they are just so huge.
And in 2015, the backlog for cases was just under 10,000, not 300,000.
What happened in 2015? Was that an important year? Did something happen?
What happened in 2015? Does anybody know? Anybody remember?
Something must have happened. A lot of things seem to get worse about that time.
You can pull up chart after chart after chart for 2015 onward and see the deterioration in Canada. Weird. Just like that, eh?
Just a coincidence. Maybe it's something to do with solar activity or something like that.
Don't you dare point a finger. Because it's, un-Canadian, right? This one here for
disgusting, actually, to quote that woman.
Immoral. Conservative MP Vincent Ho here in British Columbia had something to say here.
Hi, folks. Vincent Ho, Member of Parliament for the people of Richmond Hill South here. This summer, I met with thousands of people, and people are asking me this. Why do the Liberals keep turning Canada into a sanctuary for lawbreakers? Well, let me be clear. If you come here on a student visa and spread anti-Semitism or commit hate crimes, you should be on the next flight home and deported immediately. If you're a senior IRGC official or tied to a terrorist group, you have no business in Canada in the first place. You should be deported immediately. And if you're a temporary resident who commits violent crimes, no excuses, no special treatment, and certainly no leniency because of your immigration status. Deported immediately. Canada must put the safety of Canadians first. That means securing our border, fixing the immigration system the Liberals broke, and letting in the right people in the right numbers.
So there you go. There's a member of Parliament there sharing. Daniel Smith also asked in a town hall by a grandmother saying her grandchildren are struggling to find jobs because Ottawa's favoring foreign workers. And Smith said she agrees. I'm not going to play this clip because it's the same thing, really. That Canadians should have priority. Canadians don't have priority. I mean, how many stores have we done where Canadians seem to be riding in the back of the bus here?
Indeed. But I'm a little bit confused, Jim, because I read a CTV article today that was pushed through to my phone. So obviously only the biggest news gets pushed through to your phone. But it was an opinion article talking about why are kids struggling to find jobs? And it didn't mention the word immigration once.
No, why would it?
So
government-funded media telling you that it's not that. They push against the narrative, and then the people that do watch the television, the 50-plus, start screaming in your face, how dare you? How dare you? And here's another one here. This is from God Saad. You follow him as well. A knife attack on a bus here. A horrific knife attack. And I was going to play the clip, but this is off of Global News. But and it seemed like if you watch the full clip there, that person wasn't doing it. Maybe they said something, I don't know. But all of a sudden there was a large knife that was pulled out.
Yeah, I mean, these videos would be, I don't know if it's just, it could be a lot of things converging. Like we have the technology now, but it just seems like a day doesn't go by that I don't watch something like horrifying like that. But this one is really, really strange, isn't it? But this seems to be the world that we inhabit now.
We got a little clip here of Pierre Poilievre was on a podcast talking about defending your home and that. Let's play this clip.
You need to be able to do whatever you think is necessary to save your family. And so our caucus is going to be talking over the next several weeks about changes that the criminal code may need to clarify the absolute right of Canadians to defend themselves, including by taking very aggressive and even lethal action against someone who's broken into their house.
And then the Poilievre, they put this piece out today. There's a press release they just put out. The Conservative, they've announced the stand on guard principle, which is basically, like in the U.S., they call it CASL. Proposed amendment to the criminal code that would ensure Canadians wouldn't be thrown in jail for simply defending their homes, their families, and themselves. They're calling on the government to introduce a bill enacting this principle. I mean, this is where we're going to see if the Liberals are serious as well, because they talked about changing the criminal code. Because CASL protects people in the United States. We played that clip where it shows the Toronto police saying, just leave your keys by the front door so they don't come and disturb you, so they can just steal your car and go. Why don't you just leave your wallet, leave your jewelry, leave everything at the front door, and say beg it, then maybe with a note that says beg them not to come into your bedroom so that you can sleep in peace. And whereas in the United States, they played a clip and they showed the sheriff says, if they come into your home, shoot them, make sure they're dead, so that you save the taxpayers some money.
This has all come about because of that. That it was in Ontario, wasn't it? The break-in and the guy
broke in with
arrested.
a crossbow.
Yeah, crossbow. I was going to say there's new information now, including that he had a crossbow.
But
so
then
that guy was
with
armed.
a knife. He defended himself with a knife, and then he got arrested.
Yeah, I mean, this is classic Pierre Poilievre, to be honest. And I imagine even Liberals and people in the NDP and the rest of it, they must look at this and say, he is good at being an opposition leader. He's really good at the basics. Because this is a conservative principle, but it's also pretty much a middle ground opinion, isn't it? And he's hammering away at it. He's reacting to the news. He's seen a weak point in the Liberals, and he's having a go. And I think this is why he became so popular during the first couple of years of his time as opposition leader.
Common sense works, right? But here's where they highlight on this thing. Back in 2019, 3 masked intruders, one armed with a shotgun, sawed-off shotgun, broke into the residence in Collingwood, Ontario. And it was a Cameron Gardner and his girlfriend were zip-tied as burglars searched the house, eventually breaking free. 2 of the attackers were shot as Gardner wrestled control of the weapon. When the cops came, Gardner was one arrested, ultimately spending 6 months in jail before the charges were dropped. Imagine that.
They also mention money, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. They also mention money for lawyers, obviously, because it's like having to put up money for bail as well, but then having to give money to lawyers, because obviously you're going to freak out. You're going to want to get a good lawyer.
They brought the gun into the house. You're going to spend any amount of money you can find. They brought the gun into the house, zip-tied you, and you're supposed to do what, according to Canadian law and courts? What are you supposed to do?
Call 911 with your nose.
Bad? Don't the cops feel bad? Just like, hey, like you should have just laid there, man. Like, suck it up. Suck it up, princess.
Yeah. Speak in a charming voice to try and dissuade them from harming you.
Whimper, I guess. Doug Ford here featured in the Toronto Sun because he had obviously their quid pro quo there. They kind of like, he was showing off their newspaper. So they gave him the front cover so they showed off again. He said they just don't care, and he had the Toronto Sun in the hand, so they're making sure that they give back a little bit to Doug there.
It's like taking a photograph in a mirror or in a room that's got a mirror in the front and a mirror behind. It's just like going to go on forever.
Old Doug could play. I think he could play the linebacker for the Toronto Argonauts.
He's a big lad, stocky.
And I have some interviews coming up. When we did a lot of recent pieces on the chaos in British Columbia cities here, some interviews. And, a lot of the times what the government will say is there's nothing they can do. Nothing they can do. Nothing can be done to change crime in the cities. It's just the way it is. And we just say, it's you'll hear the typical excuse that it's happening all over the world. It's not just here. It's just the way it is. And Trump did some stuff in the United States, in Washington, especially in the capital city. And he got a lot of pushback from the mayor there saying, we don't want this. Trump's a dictator. According to Andrew Coyne, he's a dictator. He's a dictator. But I think like 20 days later, here's a reaction from the mayor of Washington.
And we greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. The most significant thing that we are highlighting today is the area of crime that was most troubling for us in 2023. Now, we have driven it down over the last years, but I'm going to get my glasses so I can make sure I can see it correctly. But for carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction
Up there.
in.
So they're making a choice. So it shows it can be done. You just have to have consequences, and you have to have policing, and then lawlessness stops.
It is a choice, but I think a lot of them see the choice being have very low crime on the one hand, or have civil liberties on the other. That's kind of how they see it, because they say, oh yeah, of course you can crack down on crime, but then you lose all your freedoms and blah, 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 blah. The Constitution is violated. That's usually how it's framed. But I haven't seen any constitutional challenges to this so far, this surge. The truth is, it is possible. It is possible to enforce the law without depriving people of their civil liberties. And I guess that's what this is about, isn't it? That's what Trump is trying to prove.
Well, and now there's Democrat cities begging him for help. They're saying, yeah, come do it here now. Come do it here now. Because people are seeing the results. They're seeing the results.
It means more money, doesn't it? It means more money, more revenue. Because people will go and buy stuff.
Catch and release, it doesn't work. You know, they interviewed a guy there, I think Fox interviewed a guy, and he said, you know, they caught him like 6 times in like, I can't even remember the period of time, in a couple of weeks. He says, why are you taking me in? He said, I'm going to be released right away. It's pointless. He said, why would you arrest me? I'm going to get released. Like, he knows he's going to get released. So that's the game, right? They know shoplifting, and even consequences.
Even if you were prosecuted, you're probably not going to be given jail time anyway. It's going to be something like community service or rehab or something like that.
Shoplifting, the cops won't even show up. Like if you phone and say, hey, there's people shoplifting, the cops say, oh yeah.
Why don't you join in?
Quebec making some news here. Quebec government to ban prayer in public places. We'll see how that goes over. Quebec is probably the only place that could get away with that, right? Because, if you tried to do that in some of the other provinces, there'd be huge pushback. But Quebec can do almost anything it wants.
There was a bit of a period, wasn't there, where Legault and Trudeau were at each other's throats about this, but Carney doesn't want to pick this fight, obviously. He's not bothered about that. But, yeah, this goes back to this is what, like, you go back to the French Revolution and the Napoleonic law code and things like that. It's very aggressive on secularization. So this is quite legitimately sort of part of their culture. So it's quite a complex issue.
And that Alberta separation movement pointing out the obvious here, that Alberta carries the water for the rest of the country, and yet gets treated like the ugly stepsister. We talked about it yesterday, how it's basically Cinderella. It is the princess, but gets treated like the ugly stepsister. And BC used to be that. It used to be also carry the water, but it's sliding.
Yeah, this goes back to 2007, doesn't it? So that includes more sensible times in the history of British Columbia.
Sliding. And then we've done the first interview we did with the president of British Columbia's BIABC, Jeremy Hyten out of Kamloops there, talking about how it's so dire for small businesses in BC right now. And this is a follow-up story. As 67% BC's businesses have had enough, and 1 in 5 are likely going to go out of business. And then so we also reached out here, and we had the DKA, the head of DKA here in Kelowna, speak out against Paul Quinn. So we reached out to Gavin Dew, MLA for Kelowna Mission, and also Tom Dias, the mayor of Kelowna. And also we got a statement. We asked for an interview. We got a statement from the NDP minister here. So here's some of the comments here from Gavin Dew. Small businesses have been left to fend for themselves under a relentless wave of vandalism and violence. And that's from Dew. Every day brings a new story of vandalism, violence, property crime, flagrant drug use, and a dead body outside a business. And then Tom Dias says, we are grateful that the business, BIABC has reached out to businesses across France because they did that survey to better understand the impacts of communities and local businesses. Their survey reinforces the very recommendation City of Kelowna has been directly advocating for the province and federal government over the past few years, including more Crown prosecutors, bail reform, compassionate mandatory care, and continued advancement of complex care and housing with wraparound supports. And then from the minister, Terry Young here, which we've asked for an interview, and they gave us a statement, but I've also pressed and sent now 2 emails requesting a live stream interview, and we're going to keep pressing on this. This is the answer from the NDP that have been here almost a decade in power. We know more needs to be done, and we're going to keep working hard with our partners in all sectors to implement real solutions so people can build a good life in a safe community in BC. And he was a former Vancouver Police Department, so he should have some good insights there. The safety of people and business, top priority. Again, the actions are different than the talk.
Yeah, is the safety of people and businesses a top priority for the BC government? I mean, how would you behave if you had the kind of power that the government has and that was a priority of yours? Would you behave as they are? That's the question you have to ask yourself, really. It doesn't particularly look like it's a priority, does it?
I've had tons of conversations with RCMP members, and I've had tons of conversations with lots of community leaders here, and that's not the case, is it? And then,
No.
and
well,
the
I mean, if it was a priority,
that,
they would talk about it every day, wouldn't they? I can't remember the last time David Eby talked about public safety, to be honest.
And the experiment that Justin Trudeau and David Eby held here in British Columbia with the decriminalization of hard drugs, an ultimate failure. Eleanor Sturko, an MLA, points that out time and time again, which is coming to an end, but it's not at an end yet. And anyway. Also in the news here, it's made a lot of, it's even made some national headlines, so we'll talk about it here. This is a boating accident here in Okanagan Lake. 3 people hospitalized following that collision there when one boat drove over top of another boat. There you go. You can go on.
It's a pretty amazing photograph, isn't it? We talked about that in the newsroom. Yeah. This was from COSAR, the Search and Rescue in the Central Okanagan. They published this picture, but pretty wild. It's like an action movie or something, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the progressives, they actually make, that was for the other story. The progressives are going to make themselves extinct, actually, because they don't want to have kids either, because they believe that it leads to problems with climate change, right? So
this guy, John Byrne Murdoch, he mentions that in the article. He mentions about the climate change, and he actually points to some studies that show that that's not true. It's not true at all. Older societies innovate less, and you need innovation to bring emissions down. So it's actually not even true.
Yeah. The big we interviewed John Carpe from the Justice Center of Constitutional Freedoms, but on September 12th, an Ottawa court will hear arguments on this has basically become the flag for the Freedom Convoy. This is the government's trying to seize this truck here from Chris Barber. It's called Big Red. And then they're asking for help there to make sure that he gets to keep that truck. That's when the Chrystia Freeland, and Mark Carney was part of that advice too, to seize bank accounts, seize assets, all that stuff. A dark time for Canadian history there. But still, the Liberals are in power. If it'd be completely different right now, if we could actually have open investigations into what happened during the Freedom Convoy, as opposed to just still the attack dogs are out and trying to silence people.
Especially after that severe rebuke from the Supreme Court, wasn't it? They just came out and said that it violated the constitutional rights of various people.
Imagine if Chris Barber did this similar type movement, got a movement like this in Russia, and did this and got against the Putin government. The uproar from Canadian media on how he needs to be protected for his freedom of speech and his right to protest and all that stuff. Not so much in Canada, right? Because what mainstream media sees Chris Barber as anything other than a criminal?
But look also at the other blockade that happened a couple of years before that, the First Nations one.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't really hear anything about that, do we? That's not even that, and that was loads more serious. That was like railways were blockaded for ages. I can't. That's just not even a topic of discussion now, is it? It's
You
kind
want to
of that's
give
ancient history. Whereas this is the lesson, isn't it? It's like exemplary justice.
And if you want to give more money to the CBC so they can do this to people that actually stood up for something, people say the truckers were Rosemary Barton said they were funded by Russia, and then a lot of people were screaming that how dare you support the truckers, and like they're a fringe movement. I think Trudeau called them a fringe movement, right? And
he called them a lot of things, didn't he? Racists and misogynists, I think he got in there. I can remember having conversations with highly educated, intelligent people in Ottawa, just your ordinary good old folk, and they were saying things like they're just fascists and stuff. And I was kind of like, I haven't seen a lot of fascism there, to be honest. I've just seen people in trucks honking their horns. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's really wild to see this, and the freezing of bank accounts too, the debanking of people, all this kind of stuff. Again, if this was happened in a different country, the Canadian media would be just screaming how this person is being vilified. But here they're still putting head on the stick, right?
Not just the bank debanking and all the rest of it, but the vilification. And you appoint, as you said, like CBC, they definitely played a role in it, but they were vilified. They were basically defamed by every institution in Canada, including the Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister himself, MPs. I mean, anybody that dared cross the boundary and actually say something reasonable about that trucker protest, like Percy Gray, for example, and Pierre Poilievre.
We did stories.
They were condemned. They were called like Nazi adjacent and things like that. Like, there was a real attempt to. It was vilification. That's the right word, I think, is to just completely destroy their reputation in public.
Well, we did stories on the Okanagan truckers that were there. We actually reached out, did interviews, and asked why they were there, and printed those stories. The amount of hate that we got for that, and said they were basically killing people because we dared to give voice to these people that were protesting. And one of the things that it doesn't matter that, hey, it was a fringe movement, and I always push back to people and say that it doesn't explain the tens of thousands that lined the ditches of Canada waving these truckers through, like crowding over overpasses, waving the flag. They discount that. All they focus on, they say it's just a few fringe movement, and they never mention the tens of thousands that line the ditches all the way to Ottawa.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of public support out there. I think the truth is, as with a lot of things during COVID, I think a lot of people just shut their mouths and didn't want to.
Well, they didn't want to
say what they really felt.
Like when they put their heads on the stick, like when they froze the bank account of that bakery on the island there, and then made sure that the media trotted that out and made sure everybody knew that story. Like, who wants their bank account frozen? Who wants that, right?
Yeah, and as we discussed, we were sent, as all other media outlets in Canada, we were sent hacked data, a sort of zip file full of people's identities, who'd their names, their numbers, their I think where they lived and how much they donated. So I think that was give, send, go. Yeah, it's literally a criminal offense, which was not investigated.
And they also, the reporters, the CBC reporters, were actually jumping up on the trucks and getting VIN numbers, and then doing the research and giving that to the government and the cops, right? To say, oh, you go after this company, this company, this company. They literally did the work, like literally got dirty and did the work for the government in this smear campaign. Anyway, Doug Ford canceled that $100 million Starlink deal and never mentioned exactly what the cancellation fee was, and never said how those people are going to get internet in those 15,000 remote homes. I use Starlink on my home for the past couple of years, and I just mounted a Starlink mini dish on my car so I can have internet as an emergency response vehicle, internet anywhere in the world at 160 kilometers an hour. So yeah, Starlink now surpasses 7 million users. It's the largest global communications company in the world, and a guy that claims to have a Canadian passport, yet according to many of the Liberals, he is nothing more than a Nazi, apparently.
I just find it ironic that the last time Starlink was in the news in a big way was to do with Ukraine, and the idea that Elon Musk had it was a moral necessity that Elon Musk let the Ukrainians have Starlink. But now it's good that Doug Ford has cancelled the Starlink deal. It's like I can't make their mind up, can they? Is it a good thing? Is it a human right and a necessity, or is it something to do with the Nazis?
You're missing. It's a narrative. That's how it works. And anyway, this happened in the U.S. Zhao Guangpan, the 71 of Brampton, has been deported from the U.S. back to Canada after pleading guilty to 3 counts of unlawful photography of military installations with a drone. That's not going to be good for Canada. You know, why is he flying a drone over U.S. U.S. military bases?
No, it's not good, is it? I really, this person here is saying we're going to lose our travel privileges to the USA. I don't know about that, but I mean, something that I am quite protective of is the 6-month automatic entry that you get. It's only Canadians that get that. Nobody else in the world gets that. So if you're just like a British citizen, a French citizen, whatever, and you want to go to the US and do like some, I don't know, a road trip for 4 months or something, you have to go into the embassy and like beg for this visa, whereas Canadians just get that automatically, and that is a privilege. So I'll be watching that closely. I hope the Americans don't steal that away.
And this is just a point on the media and how bad they were during COVID. And Chris Cuomo here was one of the worst during when he was at CNN. Now he's at Newsmax and he's pretending that he was not a part of it. So he gets called out here on Joe Rogan. Just watch this here. This is the media. This is you can't dislike the mainstream media, especially the liberal left media, more than this. Watch Chris Cuomo here lie.
Talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like it.
You did it.
No. Okay,
yes, you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the
clips. You said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No,
I'll go find
first
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched
I'm
it.
not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The clip I'm talking about wasn't on there, and it's absolutely there. Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Go ahead.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh, my God. What person? You know, you talk about, like, cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's what it is.
They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now, Chris. Chris, you can't apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was this, and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not being dishonest.
Stop. This is on the Patrick Bet David podcast there. But Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, 2 of the absolute worst when they were on CNN. Both fired on CNN. And 2 of the absolute worst. Like lying now, even trying to say you didn't say, well, just say, you know what, I messed up. Because he has come out and said it. I've seen a couple clips of him driving the car. He's like, I was wrong about everything. I was wrong about Trump. I was wrong about this. I was wrong about that. Like, the CNN started out as being called the Chicken Noodle Network when they first started out. And they, then they got that Jessica McClure kind of incident where that girl got trapped in that pipe in Texas. And they were the first 24-hour news channel that stayed on that story that really enthralled the United States, and everybody watched it, and they became, like a very well-known, one of the best news organizations in the world. But they've backslid into the Chicken Noodle Network so badly with guys like Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, and and some of the other people on there now. Like, I can't even watch that Abby Phillips and stuff like that. I mean, you watch it because you have to watch it, but like, it's just horrible.
Well, yeah, they've lost any credibility that they had as being in the center. Like, when I was growing up and it started getting interested in politics, that's what people said about CNN, like pretty sort of centrist, and like professionals said that. No way could you say that now.
No.
But I do find this interesting with Cuomo. I mean, I don't know. He's trying to change, isn't he? But it's a very difficult. Or he's trying to. You could look at it cynically and say he's just trying to like get onto another bandwagon so that he stays relevant or something like that. But he is, as you pointed out, he's trying to be different, isn't he? And he's just kind of. I don't know. I felt almost bad for him there when he was being like humiliated.
Why not just say, you know what? I think I said some stuff that I don't even remember what I said. I shouldn't have said some of those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess because nobody wants to be like a penitent their entire lives, do they? Nobody wants to say sorry forever. Maybe he's just like in his mind, he's like, all right, I said sorry, I'm sick of it now. I want to sort of defend myself. But the reality is, if he wants entry into this kind of like the Joe Rogan world, he's going to have to say sorry in a bigger way than that.
And then the wokeness stuff too, and this is the Cracker Barrel reversal. And then they actually went out and interviewed the founder of Cracker Barrel and listened to him when they show him the logo.
Logo rolled out the other day.
Oh, that's crazy. That's nothing. That's a bland nothing. It's pitiful.
Do you think she knows the story of Cracker Barrel?
I don't think so. I heard she was a Taco Bell.
She's a Taco Bell person. There you go. You know what? We talked about a lot of negativity today, and I want to leave you with some hope. And we'll leave this last clip here. That's kind of like hope. And I would say, like, again, this is a piece of hope, I believe, and I believe technology will solve a lot of our problems. And we need to, guys like Tim Hodgson give me hope, even in the Liberal Party. But Elon Musk should be embraced by the world, not vilified by some of these liberals here. But look at we're going to just watch the launch of SpaceX here. Let's play this clip here.
Do you think what this heralds really is fundamentally a new era in spaceflight, a new era in space exploration? We're going to go to the moon.
No, play it. I need the words. It doesn't matter. There you go. There's the Starship Heavy. You can play it now. I don't think there's music on there. Well, maybe there is. You can cut it again. But anyway, there you go. There's the Raptor engines firing away. So he's talking about building a base on the moon. And, you know, there's a lot of talk out on the internet that we didn't even go to the Apollo missions, didn't even make it to the moon. Well, for all those people, Elon Musk won't lie about it. He'll get there and build a base on the moon.
I mean, the evidence is rather strong, isn't it, that the moon landings did in fact occur. There are literally objects on the moon that you can see with a telescope if it's powerful enough. But
I'm just saying. I mean, just saying the lunacy of it. So it's what SpaceX has been able to accomplish is just nothing short of astonishing. I think they do more. I think 10x launches into space and all the other launches in the world combined. The stuff that Elon Musk has accomplished. He builds the best electric cars. Basically, Tesla's an energy company and an AI company. SpaceX is like probably the most important company in the world, because Starlink is owned by SpaceX, the largest global communications company in the world. Boring company. If you've ever tried the boring tunnels, I've used them in Vegas. It's absolutely amazing. Neuralink, which is going to help blind people see and people quadriplegic walk again. And yet the Canadian liberals and the media here in Canada somehow vilified this man to be a Nazi, which is absolutely ridiculous.
But
he's got
did
Canadian heritage. His mother was
wave at people, didn't he? And that makes him pretty fascist.
And his mother's from Saskatchewan. How do you hate people from Saskatchewan, man? Saskatchewan is our breadbasket, literally our breadbasket. Alberta and Saskatchewan and British Columbia used to be in that. They're literally the strength of Canada as far as resources go. So with that said, that's our show for this week, though. Like I said, we do have a Kelowna-based show. That's on Kelowna News. Josh Duncan comes on around 3 o'clock, and you can tune into that. And it gives you more of a local focus. Ian and I do more of a national/international focus, and we hope you enjoy it. And we hope you share it with other people, because we don't get the budget that the CBC gets, you know, not even a little bit of it. CBC, and they push you a narrative. They'll tell you stuff. They get it beamed from somewhere. Someone in an earpiece and said the Russians did it. Crazy world. That's our show.
The Russians did plenty. We don't have to make stuff up for them.
Right.
The truth is bad enough.
That's it. You got to raise your voice. And why are you watching TV? Who's watching TV? That's crazy. Thank you for watching Now Media, though.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent.